They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
The left is fighting mad as President Trump and Elon Musk fight the swamp. It has been a big week, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn. Katie Gorka, she has left us for the islands of Hawaii. Yeah, a little bit jealous. She is looking at rainbows and greenery, but that's okay because I get to look at the very lovely and talented Libby Emmons, who joins us this episode. She's editor-in-chief at the Post Millennial. She does incredible work. You can give her a follow at Libby Emmons. Always check out the Post Millennial. Support them if you can. And Libby, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm sorry Katie's not here, but I'm really glad to catch up with you because I'm a big fan.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad to be here.
So there is so much going on. First of all, the Post Millennial does everything from culture to politics. I've got some questions on all of that, but I guess we should start with DOGE. You know, I'm a big fan of what's being uncovered in Washington, D.C. this week. We saw an interview that I thought was very interesting. Elon Musk and President Trump sitting with Sean Hannity. And Libby, it was interesting because the left has been trying to, it's so obvious, call Elon Musk President Musk, say he's taking over cabinet meetings. I mean, they have no shame, and they're clearly trying to split these two up to play on President Trump's ego, but seems like they're in lockstep right now. How are you enjoying their first, 29 days of DOGE?
Yeah, I think it's been really fascinating. And I think that you're right that the left has been remarkably upset about the initiative by the Trump administration and by this new DOGE, which of course is now taking over a previous agency. But they've been upset about the investigation into government waste and spending. And it has been sort of shocking to hear you have pundits come out and talk about it, Democrats come out and talk about it. And a lot of times what they say is that these spending programs with USAID or, you know, the massive subscription payments to Politico or any of the other things, they say that these are just very small amounts of money. But these small amounts of money, in a lot of cases, are more than any American really imagines they're going to make in a lifetime. These are huge amounts of money when you hear them with civilian ears. So yeah, I've been glad to see a lot of this stuff being exposed. I think we can probably operate with a much more tailored federal government.
You know, I think for a lot of years now, especially since the country has known President Trump and people have been watching him, he's been talking about the swamp. He wants to drain the swamp. We talk about the swamp. Is it possible that maybe we found the swamp now? Is the swamp really this huge amount of money that was being pushed around, used by the CIA almost as a slush fund? I mean, we realize President Trump's impeachment was funded with that money. Other governments' elections are being dictated by that money. Forget just the pet projects and some of the crazy stuff, but literally, I feel like we're on the precipice of finding just exactly where that swamp creature was living, or at least feeding, with all of this wasteful money.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that. There doesn't seem to be a lot of respect for the taxpayers' dime in Washington, and that's really a shame. And for anyone who's worked in offices, or even who enjoyed watching The Office on television, you know that people who work in offices have an insane amount of downtime. You know, you don't do a lot of work necessarily in a day. You get in a little bit late, you chit chat with your coworkers, figure out what you're all getting for lunch, you reply to a couple of emails, you do a little bit of work. Sometimes you have a crunch. But I wonder how much work has really been being done in these agencies. You know, you talk to people who have friends who work in government and friends who work remotely for government agencies. And I've heard about people who are moonlighting while they're working for us taxpayers. They're getting paid by us. They have a lot of good benefits, a lot of good vacation pay, student loan forgiveness, all of this stuff that for many of us in the private sector just seems like some kind of wonderful dream. And yet here they are complaining about all of this. I do worry what's going to happen with all of these people when they're laid off. I don't know that the private sector is ready to absorb everyone. And I wonder if people are going to have potentially chips on their shoulders and try and use some of their newfound free time to undermine and go after the Trump administration simply as a means of retaliation.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of unemployed government workers and a lot of, I guess, underpaid now 350-year-old people wandering around. They've also found
Right.
a lot
How
of
are they
social.
going to get their oatmeal? You know?
Yeah,
How are they gonna
exactly.
do
How
that?
are they going to get their fiber and their prunes at 257? It's just really interesting to watch all this. I was seeing a report, I think it might have been yesterday, earlier in the week, from the EPA that on Mondays and Fridays, like only 8.5% of the workforce would actually be there. So to your point, everybody was kind of calling it, phoning it in, working from home, taking advantage of their big salaries, but there are going to be some cuts made. I do want to ask you about Politico and Reuters and AP. I'm guessing your group, the Post Millennial, did not take any of this USAID money. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and guess
No,
that.
we do this crazy thing called earning our keep. That's what we
Weird.
do.
Yeah,
Right.
weird. Okay,
Totally
good
crazy.
journalism. Yeah. So, okay, you didn't take any money at the Post Millennial, but some of these groups did. And Politico, especially disturbing because they took a lot of money. There was some reports that their employees weren't getting paid as soon as they got cut off of this money. We know that they are one of the first groups that published the Hunter Biden story. What's your take from a media perspective about these groups taking this money from taxpayers?
I think that these publications believe that their incredibly high-end subscription services are worth it. I bet that they think they're providing a really important service. But we have, of course, seen, and you mentioned the Hunter Biden laptop. Politico was the outlet that published the letter from, 51 former and current Intel agents saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story had all of the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. This was then used by Joe Biden at the debate against Donald Trump in that year in 2020. It was used by Antony Blinken, who was working for the campaign at the time and went on to become Secretary of State, but was the one who contacted an Intel person in the first place saying, hey, do you think you might want to get your pals together and debunk this true thing for us? And so, yeah, Politico did do that. They pushed that out. It was false. It was used against Trump. It was used to mislead American voters. And they have still not issued an apology for it. And that letter was the reason that was given by NPR, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and others for not covering the story that was broken in the New York Post by Emma Jo Morris. And that was egregious. There were polls that came out after the election showing that people would not necessarily have voted for Joe Biden had they known that that was real. And there was absolutely no apology from Politico for that. We've also seen people who have since left the organization saying that it was just kind of an unspoken rule that they wouldn't write anything negative against Biden. So what you had, when you had government officials spending across agencies, spending $8.2 million over 4 years for high-end subscriptions, you had a feedback loop, right? So Politico won't write anything negative about the administration. They will boost the policies that you are implementing, and then you will get that in your email. You will get that in your subscription, and you could check it out. So it really was this vicious snaking in its own tail cycle that was designed, to a certain extent, to reduce any kind of critical thinking on behalf of people who were implementing this policy.
Hey guys, Jen here. And as we age, we all start to deal with some aches, some pains, maybe some thinning hair. Oh gosh, don't even get me started on the crow's feet, the wrinkling skin, even our nails start to get more brittle. But I want to tell you about this amazing product, Revive from Brightcore Nutrition. This is easy to mix, multi-collagen powder that helps to strengthen bones and joints. Plus, the best thing about Revive is that it works from the inside out. It's also going to help you rejuvenate your skin, help you grow back thicker, healthier hair, and strengthen those brittle nails. I've been using Revive every single day. I absolutely love it. It is easily mixing into any drink you want. I put the unflavored version in my coffee, mix the strawberry lemonade with water. It tastes great. Easy to drink, easy to take, and easy to incorporate in your daily routine. And here's what makes Revive special. It contains 5 types of collagen, hyaluronic acid, biotin, and vitamin C, which all work synergistically to make you feel and look younger than ever. It's all natural, non-GMO, and we love it, 100% made in the USA. Now today, get a special offer using our code HAPPYWOMEN. You get 25% off with the code HAPPYWOMEN by going to mybrightcore.com/HAPPYWOMEN. And again, that's mybrightcore.com/HAPPYWOMEN. Or you can call Brightcore for up to 50% off and free shipping. You can give them a call right now at 888-927-5980, and their educated staff will make sure that Revive is right for you. 888-927-5980. That's 888-927-5980. Make sure to mention Happy Women to get your free shipping and your money-saving offer. And you want to go online, check out their product catalog, go to mybrightcore.com/happywomen. mybrightcore.com/happywomen. Use the code HAPPYWOMEN.
But I think what's really dangerous too, just diving into that for a second, is that this isn't the first time we've seen one of these loops in existence. I mean, what did we see when the FBI when President Trump came out? Look, I was a Trump fan from the time he came down the escalator, and I was happy when he won. I was ecstatic when he won the first time. But when he first came out and said, Obama's spying on me, I admit I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. This has got to be crazy. This can't be right. But he was right, and the Obama administration was spying on him. And we figured out how it all happened. You had people giving anonymous tips to news media organizations who would write about those tips, no questions asked. And then they would use those newspaper articles to pull warrants on everybody in Trump's circle. So these things are incredibly dangerous. It could change elections. It could change the way we think about certain people, certain leaders. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, as an independent journalist, it has to eat away at you, because there are very few of you, Libby, left who are just critical thinkers, who are going to ask the hard questions to everybody. That's what we should be doing, instead of feeding into this machine that has developed and has taken over our government.
Yeah, I think that independent media and the people who have been working in independent media since the first Trump administration should be really proud of the work that they have done, because they have not only exposed some of those plots, they have exposed plots against citizens with the FISA warrants and how the FISA courts and how that was used just against everyday Americans. And they have also exposed the rot in so much of mainstream media and legacy media that was geared entirely towards supporting the Democrat regime, whether it was Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris. And it was just it was very apparent to a lot of people watching. And it was important to have so many in independent journalism pointing that out and saying, actually, you're wrong. You're wrong about COVID mandates. You're wrong about lockdowns. You're wrong about the plots against Trump. They're not crazy. It turns out that they're real. And you notice that every couple of months it would be a bunch of people say, oh, COVID leaked from a lab, for example. And then they were called racist and crazy and conspiracy theorists. And then it slowly started to leak out. And then now, during the Biden administration, it became apparent and obvious that it had been a lab leak. And a lot of people, high up had to admit that. So once you're onto something, you just got to keep pulling that string until the whole sweater unravels.
And thank God, I really do think that this is the Renaissance period for independent journalists, because I think there are so many people who have now realized that they've had the wool pulled over their eyes, that they've been lied to, that they're going to seek out sources that are into telling the truth and actually reporting facts instead of just storylines. Now, Libby, I saw you just in the same vein of waste and fraud and corruption. The Department of Education is under scrutiny, and you were doing a podcast with Laura Trump about all of this. And there are a lot of people on the left. My mom's a teacher who she and I do not get along. She's very liberal. We get along in life. We love each other, but in politics, we don't. But she's going crazy about the idea that the Department of Education could be dissolved. I'm all about it, because the Department of Education, I mean, we need to be empowering states to do a better job here. Give us your take on the threat from the Trump administration and even maybe the incoming Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to dissolve this and what it could do to kids. Is it going to be a win ultimately?
I think it will, so long as states are in place to take that money and do the right thing with it. States know what the kids need better than the federal government does. And the federal government has used the Department of Education to really indoctrinate kids to weaponized funding. We saw that with Joe Biden's executive order requiring all federal agencies to implement trans inclusion and DEI inclusion and all of this stuff. And that's how we ended up with the Department of Agriculture literally withholding free school lunch aid from poor kids from school districts that refuse to allow boys to use girls' bathrooms. That's what we ended up with. Yeah. And when you talk to people like your mom or my mom, who similar situation, they don't believe you. They think that you sound like a crazy person when you say that the Biden administration was going to withhold funding from schools that did not allow boys to compete against girls in athletics, or didn't allow boys to use women's change rooms and women's showers. They think you sound like a crazy person. And it's, of course, true. This is something Betsy DeVos was fighting in the first Trump administration. She took Connecticut to court. And then Joe Biden elevated Connecticut's education secretary to be a federal education secretary. So in terms of the Department of Education, which I think was brought in by Jimmy Carter, signed into law something like 1980, we have not seen a drastic improvement in test scores. We have not seen a drastic improvement in the ability of children to read. In fact, a lot of the really crappy ideas in education have, instead of just, being in one spot and screwing over a couple of kids, have been disseminated, like these new kinds of reading standards that are not based in phonics, which makes no sense. There's this new thing where you're supposed to memorize words. Total garbage. Phonics works. Everybody knows it. Stop doing dumb stuff. Same thing with math. Laura was talking about math. And when I had the same experience when my son started coming home with this math stuff, and I'm like, so you're not just supposed to add normally? No, you're supposed to do it in your head. And I'd be like, okay, well then in secret, use a scrap paper and just do the math normally, because it takes a while of doing math like a normal person, where you add it and you carry the two or whatever before you can start doing it in your head. That's not the first thing that happens, is that we're all just mental calculators. And I think that the Department of Education has had good intentions, but it has not been used that way. And it's been really damaging to kids. And I hope that, and there's a lot of stuff too. This is something I wrote about in Human Events last week. The Department of Education funded Chromebooks, which are just all over schools like a fungus. You try and tell your kid, like, go practice piano and read for a while. And they say they have to do their homework. And what's their homework? Sitting on a damn computer, trying to memorize math. It's absolutely ludicrous what's being done. And not only that, but you have this stuff too. You have all of these, I could go on forever, but you have all of these portals and programs and apps, and you have to do all of your work in these apps. And all of these apps, when you go to their website, they say, hey, school districts, you can apply for funding to use this in your district under Title I or under Title III, or for the program for Native Americans, or the program for homeless kids, or the program to keep kids off drugs. They actually say these garbage programs, the founders of them will say, like, this program can be used to keep kids off drugs because it's so exciting. And it's like, you know what? You need drugs to sit and look at this thing for 5 hours. What are you talking about? Like, they all have ADHD and they're on Ritalin or whatever. Like, that's how they're focusing on your dumb program. Absolutely ludicrous. I am livid about that. So I really hope that deconstructing the Department of Education, taking that money and putting it where it belongs, for example, Pell Grants, given to the Treasury, all of this other stuff, like distributed among other agencies where it's needed to be federally administered. The rest of the money, get it out to the states, hire more teachers, build more schools, buy more just books, buy pencils, buy pencil sharpeners, buy some extra basketballs, do this stuff that we know works. Let the kids run around, read, play instruments, build stuff. Let's build shops in every school. That would be great. So what we've been doing with the Department of Education has been such a failure that I think a complete demolition of it and a rebuilding at the state level can only be an improvement for America's kids.
Except I live in California and I cannot trust that they're not going to do anything. So if you really want to see your head fly off your shoulders, listen to this. So this week, you probably heard about it. And I totally wanted to talk to you about the Chromebooks, because in the LA Unified School District, huge school district, they just implemented a cell phone ban during class. But what they don't tell you is that they're using all of these ridiculous Chromebooks. So what's happening? The kids are still texting one another. They're still taking pictures. They're still doing videos. They're still allowed to go online because there's free reign given to these kids on their Chromebooks and on their little Apple devices that they're given to do all their schoolwork. It is laughable. And so, yeah, we have a screen problem. You want to take away your kids' cell phones. Great. And I'm happy about it. I don't think they should be on cell phones in school, although that's more of a parenting choice. But you're giving them devices with your other hand as you take away the cell phones with your right hand. I mean, it's crazy.
And like for a lot of parents, like how do you ground your kid at this point? You take away their gaming stuff, you take away their phone, you take away their computer. Yeah. I had a disagreement with my son recently. I was like, okay, that's it. No electronics, whatever. And the next thing I know, he's like, but I need to turn in my paper. I'm like,
you don't want me to fail out of school, Mom, do you?
Right. And so I'm sitting there like, I like the school system that doesn't provide paper, pencils, and proper books is screwing up my whole parenting thing. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's not good. And also with the books, they have these kids reading excerpts or reading abridged versions or reading the graphic novel version of things. Just give them books. These kids can handle it. They're not idiots. They're our kids. They know stuff. They're smart enough to, get around the electronics bans. They're smart enough to launch their own YouTube channels. They can do this. They can read The Great Gatsby and Frankenstein. They don't need to have it all dumbed. Yeah, they don't need to have it all dumbed down. And the thing, too, that everybody forgets, from the Department of Education on down, is that if you want kids to succeed, you need to tell them what the standards are. You need to hold them to high expectations, and you need to tell them they can do it. You can't just, have this soft, it's bigotry, the soft bigotry of low expectations that we see everywhere. And we're seeing it with all kids. They just treat kids like they can't think, like they're not capable of doing the tough work. And they're like, oh, that's okay, you stupid, dumb kid. Let's just give you stupid work because you don't know how to think for yourself. You don't even know how to read. And so kids are falling short of very low expectations. And that should never be acceptable. We should hold them to really high expectations and demand that they meet them. That's the kind of education I had. And it was terrifying. I had some teachers and it was like, oh no, like I'm going to be in trouble here because I can't get to that standard. And then you know what you do? You work harder. You get there.
And then when you do, it feels really good. You are so preaching it to my heart, not just about kids, but this is the same kind of crap that they do when they are talking to minorities or to women. I mean, this is why I go nuts I don't know where all the feminists have gone, Libby, because I want to be chosen because I am the best person for the job, not because they need a woman to do a talk radio show.
That's what we used to think.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And so it's the same thing that we're doing to kids. It's like we're training them, getting them ready to just not excel. We need to get back to merit-based everything because it is more rewarding for you. It does teach you hard work. And you know what? Not everybody's going to be good at everything, but you're going to actually, in that kind of system, find what you are good at, what you do excel at, and you can pursue that. It boggles the mind. But
I totally agree with you. And it's infuriating to see the kids treated this way when you know that they can do more, not only that they can do more, but that they must do more because our country is depending on that. We're all going to be old someday. And these are the people who we're going to need to be out there flying planes, running the government and leading the big charge into the future. Yeah, right. That's important too. But we need them to know that they can excel because we need them to excel. What good is our country if our kids are just falling behind all the time? I don't want my son to be replaced with AI. I don't want our kids to think that they're not capable. I don't want them to be like sucking on the government dole for their whole lives and going to the weed dispensary and, playing video games and that's their whole thing. I don't want that. And I don't think that any of us should want that. I don't think the kids should want that, but it definitely seemed like that's what, the Democrat lawmakers who are pushing all of this stuff, it does seem like they want that. Now, I think that they think they have really good intentions. And I think they think they're doing the right thing in a lot of cases, but they're not actually thinking it through. They're letting themselves be guided by a toxic empathy and compassion that actually diminishes the capability of our children and our educators than it does to raise them up and give them the room to grow and excel.
Yeah. And I think in most cases, probably by and large, you're right. I think that it is well intentioned, but the people who set this system up, I don't believe have any good intentions in their mind. What they're doing is creating a system where we can grow more government, because when people are
It's
at
true
the weed
too.
store and playing video games all day, what happens? They need the government to take care of them. And clearly we know that that's the trend that we've been on in this country, is to grow government instead of to be go-getters like our country was founded on, to go out there and be independent and freedom seeking and take care of ourselves. We now need the government to tell us everything. So I think in many cases, yes, you have people who just fall in line, these lemmings who go, yeah, we want to do the right thing. We don't want anybody to feel bad. But you've got people who are really bad out there who are saying, no, we want to change the shape of America, and this is how we do it. Kill the spirit.
Keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. This email brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe right now today. It's free at salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump. That's salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump.
Yeah. And they have been killing the spirit.
Yeah.
You have a generation of kids who went through COVID. And I've talked to a lot of moms who have similar aged kids, young teen boy kids. And they look at their sons and they're like, they were so poorly served. They don't even see the point in going to school. They don't see any point other than to, get the right grade and get out of the way, because they don't want any part of this. And this is going to diminish the intellectual capital of our nation. And it's a waste of these boys who are going to have to find other ways to fulfill themselves and fulfill, God's path for them, because school has really let them down. And that's not just the Department of Education. It's the whole Biden administration. It's every blue city that locked everybody up. In New York, I could, at a certain point, because they were requiring that all kids 12 and over have this vaccine, this, bad COVID vaccine, we couldn't go out to dinner. I couldn't, I just kept driving to Jersey because we lived near, that way. And it's like, what are you doing here, people? What are you doing to my children? You don't have this right. And if this is what's been pushed by the DOE, which is really in the pocket of the National Education Association, which is the largest union in the country, then you're done. And so much of this too, isn't it propped up to facilitate and further government worker unions? Like the NEA, or like all of these unions that have their people in government positions. There's no point to a government workers union. A union is to protect workers from unfair labor practices. Is the government employing unfair labor practices? No, I think instead the government, with our tax dollars, is being taken advantage of by unions that just want more and more and more. And since there's no bottom line, they can just keep taxing us to pay for raises and more paternity leave or whatever else it is.
And more control of the government. I mean, in California, the unions run the state. It has literally become a state of the unions and the environmentalists. And that's it. I mean, people love to look at Gavin Newsom and say he could be the next president. This guy doesn't know what to do if the unions and the environmentalists are not telling him what to do. We could talk about this forever, and I would love to, because this is a great topic with you. But you live in New York. Got to know your take on Mayor Eric Adams and this kind of war with Kathy Hochul. There have been some chats, at least outside of the state of New York, maybe in the state, that the left is kind of upset, obviously, that Eric Adams has been working with the Trump administration. They say he's taken this deal so that he gets the charges dropped against him, so that he starts working on immigration. But people forget he was calling out immigration, which is how he found himself investigated by the Biden administration to begin with. So I don't know if I buy that so much. But I have been chatting with people that maybe it's not necessarily making a deal about immigration, but is it possible that Eric Adams may have turned state's evidence against Kathy Hochul? And does she also, and Letitia James and all of the others in New York? Or is this maybe just all coincidental that everything is kind of coming home to roost at the same time?
I think a lot of things are true at the same time. I think that Mayor Adams probably did engage in some illicit campaign donations from Turkey. I think he took some nice flights and stayed in some nice hotels. I don't necessarily think that that's a reason to get rid of him. They do have the one thing about how he let a consulate get a C of O without having the proper fire approval. Okay, that's a little dodgy, especially when you consider fires in cities, but whatever. I think probably that's true. I don't think, however, that it was a great use of federal dollars to investigate him for this little turkey thing to the point where it disrupted the entire government of the city of New York and had masses of people resigning even before this whole thing. And then once you had Trump come into office, and yes, Adams had been speaking out against the immigration crisis in the city and what Biden had done. But what he was doing was asking for more money. He wasn't saying like, shut off the border. He was saying like, we need more money if we're going to do this. And what he's trying to do is keep the city of New York from falling into total and complete ruin. And he's going to grab any ally that he possibly can to make that happen. He's a born and raised New Yorker. So is Donald Trump. Kathy's from upstate, so maybe she has a grudge against the city like so many people upstate actually do. I moved out of the city just a couple of years ago, so I'm not there anymore, although I do consider myself a lifelong New Yorker. But yeah, I think that it's possible. I've heard these grumblings too about Adams potentially turning state's evidence against Kathy Hochul. And then today, Kathy Hochul got another blow because the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, said, we're done with your congestion pricing. It's not actually good. You're using the money the wrong way because you're using it to fund the MTA, not bolster roads, which is what tolls are for. And you haven't provided an alternative for people who can't pay the toll, but still need to be in the district with their car. So I think New York is in a bit of trouble, and it's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. There's also sort of this dark horse waiting in the wings. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is interested in becoming the mayor of New York City. And I got to say, I know he did a mess with COVID, but I think that he would have a good shot at getting elected by New Yorkers because he does have that air of authority. He's got that little philosophical streak. And he's one of the only people in the state who could actually do battle with Kathy Hochul and come out on top. Plus, I bet he's got a real grudge match against her right now.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? She's got no great choices because Eric Adams is not a fan. She's got Cuomo waiting in the wings. She's got some issues going on. I think it'll be interesting to see if Cuomo can get in there. I mean, I do believe he's got a chance, actually, because people fell in love with him during COVID. He just has that it factor that I think Trump has. I hate to say it, Gavin Newsom has it sometimes. But some of these politicians that resonate with people.
That's how they get there, right?
That's exactly right. All right. I know you're up against the clock here, but I've got to ask you one more question. We didn't even get to Russia. Holy smokes. But we'll have you back. Hollywood Bowl, right down the street from where I live in Los Angeles, has just come out. And I'm glad you're writing about this at the Post Millennial because it has been pretty much crickets in Los Angeles. No one seems to be speaking out about this. But Cynthia Erivo, who was great in Wicked, she played Elphaba. She is going to be playing Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. Now, I'm almost never speechless. This renders me speechless. Libby, what do you think about this announcement?
I'm not a fan of the plan, and I'll tell you why. Cynthia Erivo is a woman. Jesus Christ was a man. Jesus Christ, the man himself, the stories about him, the story of his childhood, of his growing up, of his sacrificing himself to save the world, sacrificing himself to save sinners. I mean, it's one of the most, if not the most beautiful story mankind has ever told. It's absolutely a heartbreaking, beautiful story that gives us all hope that we can be redeemed in life and that we can achieve great things. Both of those things are true just from this one story. The man only lived to be 33 years old. Come on. Like, this is amazing. It's a masculine hero's journey. That is a key thing about it, is the masculine hero's journey. What does a young man do? He grows up curious, inquisitive. He pushes back against authority. He gathers together all the strength in himself to follow his mission, what he believes is most important. And this is separating it a little bit from Jesus because it is this universal story, but it is his story. And then he goes on, he gives of himself, everything that he's got to save the world and to do what God asks of him. And that's a hymn. That's a man's story. There are feminine heroes' journeys. And for me, the most beautiful feminine hero's journey is Jesus's mother, Mary. Absolutely just a shocking story. She had this child. For those of us who have had children, if you love a child, you know that this is, just it fills up your whole heart until it bursts, right? I mean, the joy can break your heart alone. It's insane. And here Mary is. She raises up this boy. He's inquisitive. He's curious. He takes risks. He's smart. He gets, lost arguing and debating with Pharisees and whatnot, and the rabbis. He's this great kid, you imagine. Probably causes her a lot of anxiety, but here he is, and she's done this. She's got this beautiful son. And then she has to, after guiding him to adulthood, she has to watch him sacrifice everything of himself to save the world and follow God's mission. I mean, my goodness gracious. It's just absolutely beautiful. For each of us, all people have a little bit of those stories in their life. Men who raise their children and who give of themselves that way. When we watch our sons, we all do. But it's a masculine hero story, and I think it should stay that way. And we can all aspire to, do our best to be like Jesus, knowing that we will, of course, totally fail and fall short. We know what the expectation is. We can try. Then we can get redeemed and try again, because that's what the story is. And I don't think that this is a story that should be given to a woman to play. And the other thing about it is it's not being given to a woman to play because she's the best person for the role. As we were talking about before, she's not the best actor for the part, probably. I bet you could name a dozen male actors who would be far better. So why are we giving it to a woman to play this role? For political reasons. It's about political messaging. And this is a woman also who speaks openly about how one of her artistic impulses is to lead with sexuality, right? It's like the political sexuality message. She's queer, non-binary. That's like this whole part of her thing. That's not what Jesus was about.
No.
And you can be an actor and play another role for sure, but we know that this is a political project. This is political messaging. This is taking the story of Jesus Christ and turning it into propaganda for your queer cause.
What it is.
And I'm not a fan. I'm not going to go see the show. I'm not into it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to make for good art.
I'm just surprised that there hasn't been more backlash, because it is a story. It's almost a protected story. And I'm usually pretty liberal when it comes to art, but you don't smack people in the face with what you suggest. And that is that this is a masculine story to tell. And that doesn't mean that there are not a million other things that she would be fantastic in, I'm sure. But you just have to wonder, is it because they want to do this for the good of this show or to tell the story, or are they trying to make a statement? And clearly they're trying to make a statement here.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Libby, it's been so fun to chat with you. Again, give her a follow at Libby Emmons, and make sure you're checking out the Post Millennial. That's where she is editor-in-chief. You can help support them. You should be checking it every day for your news as well. And we thank you so much for being with us, Libby.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too. All right. Don't forget, you can follow Katie. Even though she's not here today, she would love it. Give her a follow at Catherine Gorka. You can find her on Facebook. Search her out there. And Gorka Katie on X. You can get her book, Next Gen Marxism, available wherever you get your books. You can find me too on Instagram and Facebook at Jennifer Horn Radio and at Jennifer Horn on Truth and X. And keep those 5-star reviews coming, and share Happy Women with your friends. It does really, really make a difference. And we appreciate each and every one of you. You can connect on all of our platforms at SalemPodcastNetwork.com. Thanks for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.